Hey there, I'm Jackie Ferris. This week on the 302, we are at the beautiful Reed House and Gardens where we're checking out Lit for the Holidays. It's a celebration you surely don't want to miss, and we're also going to talk about what you can see in the new year. Grab your cup of cheer. The 302 is getting ready to fill it to the brim. We are at Reed House and Gardens where they're celebrating the holidays with a very special exhibit, and we're going to tell you all about that. But first, I want to introduce you to Brenton Grum. He is the Executive Director for Reed House and Gardens. Brenton, thank you so much for joining us.
Jackie, it's always good to have you here.
So let's talk a little bit first about the history for somebody who maybe this is an introduction, an unwrapping of a gift, as it were, for the holidays. Tell us about Reed House and Gardens.
It's a gorgeous house, right? It's an old house. It was built around 1800 for George Reed II and his family. He was the son of George Reed I, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, signer of the Constitution, and the son built this grand house, expecting a similar career. Fast forward into the 20th century, and it sort of had a whole new life, became famous for being an old house, and it was in lots of lifestyle and shelter magazines as kind of this icon for the new colonial revival taste. And so it was really celebrated that time, and it was lovingly decorated and restored by a couple named Philip and Lydia Laird, who used it really as a great party place.
Now, when you look around, it really is gorgeous. There's so much detail, especially in the molding, and it really has a unique distinction in terms of the type of decoration in the molding that no other place has. Is that right?
Right. Well, so there are lots of places that have this, it's called punch and gouge decoration. It's a way of creating ornament in the wood carving. And you can see it all around Philadelphia and, outward from the Philly region, but there's no place that has more of it than here. It's just everywhere, and it's really spectacular.
It's really beautiful, and you go from one room to the other. The colors are gorgeous. The exhibits are gorgeous. Gorgeous furniture that you have here that really kind of takes you back in time.
In a way. So the furniture you see around us, this was sort of researched very carefully by curators and staged as if, it might have been during the Reed's time here. We're not walking into a time capsule. It's a modern creation. And so that's a little something that informs the way that we engage with guests today. We want people to actually peel back the layers and say, okay, this was intentionally put this way as an example. And, in the 1920s, during the colonial revival, things were decorated in a very different way. And, it just sort of goes back and back and back. But just like you and me, every generation who comes and says, wow, what a spectacular house, they have their own ideas and sensibilities from their own time to make it feel right and beautiful for them.
Now, you guys just went through a renovation, is that right?
So, right, it was a renovation of HVAC systems, which is like the least glamorous thing you can do in a place like this, but it's really critical because in order to preserve all of the details you see here, the plaster, the furniture, the metals, ceramics, this all has to be kept in a very carefully controlled climate. And so we think we've done quite a state-of-the-art job at making that happen over the past year, during a pandemic, no less.
So when people come to visit you for the holidays, you have a very special treat for them, a present, as it were, lit for the holidays. Tell me a little bit about that.
Lit for the Holidays is a new tradition that we started 3 years ago, but it's based on an old tradition. When the Lairds were living here, they had famous holiday parties, Christmas parties, New Year's Day parties, and initially we thought, all right, let's bring this back for a younger generation. There was a lot of booze coming in through here during Prohibition, especially through the Delaware River, which is right behind us. And the Lairds had, as I said, famous parties in their tap room. We thought, what if we, sort of attract a younger crowd, have some really strong, Philadelphia fish house punch, and make it a party. And it was a hit. But the second time we did it, the next year, we found that there were people in their 20s, there were people in their 70s, and everywhere in between, and they were all having a great time in the same place. So we knew we were really onto something then. And by last year, when we were hit with this health crisis and thought, gosh, this tradition is already going to be, on pause, we said, no, all right, we will take it from a house party and move it out to the garden. So we lit up the gardens with tents and fire pit and music and so forth. We've done that again this year. And we started bringing in artists from near and far to do installations in windows around the house that you could look at from the outside. And it's marvelous because it brings in these perspectives from all over the place. Everybody brings their own sort of life, their own sensibilities, their own experience, and they look at this house and then they create something brand new that can teach us all a little more that perhaps we hadn't noticed about the place before.
Now, this is, as you said, part of a tradition. Now, this area is called the Strand, right?
That's right, this street is.
Talk to me a little bit about the Christmas tradition on the Strand. What is it like here?
It's a very festive place. This is a very old town. The streets have, many of the streets have cobblestones on them, and the old houses are really well preserved. So there's a lot of traditional, wreaths and garlands, and it's just gorgeous. And so this whole Lit for the Holidays project was, thinking about how can we take that tradition that's so rich here and then figure out what's the next step, what's the new layer to make it even richer for our time and hopefully some years to come.
And then we're going to talk a little bit more about the traditions and some of the surprises that Lit for the Holidays will have when we return.
Hi, I'm Heather Sullivan with Lavender Fields, and we love exploring lavender and nature on the 302.
Welcome back. We're talking about Lit for the Holidays, and we're joined by Kayla Martell. She is with marketing at the Reed House and Gardens. And first of all, Brenton, I wanted to, kind of dive into the mediums that the artists use, the 10 artists. They run the gamut from the traditional to the surprising. What's the most surprising, you think?
The most surprising, it's got to be the hair. We're going to have wigs for Lit for the Holidays.
Wow.
But there's a reason for it, actually. Historically, there's a really special story that was buried for years and years here in Newcastle and just came to light very recently. There was a man named Augustus Jameau, who in the early 1800s was a refugee of the Haitian Revolution, as many people were to this part of the country. He was a man of mixed race, we know, because he came by letter of introduction to George Reed, described as the mulatto French barber, which meant that he was of both African and European descent. And as with many free men of color at that time, he had the profession called barber, but he was a lot more than a barber. He did men's and women's hair, but he was sort of a tastemaker around town. He sold fine imported goods like ostrich plumes, perfume, beads, and people like the Reeds trusted him as the guy to find them the best champagne, the best cigars in Philadelphia. He really knew how to make the party. And we wanted to honor Jameau this year by bringing in guest artists who could do hair in really spectacular ways. Kayla knows more about this than I do, but we think it's going to be a really exciting take on history blended with contemporary styles.
So Kayla, tell us about the artists that are going to bring Jameau's legacy to life.
Actually, we have two hair artists who are going to be sending out hair. One will actually be here in person, both coming, sending products from California. So one from Hollywood, one from Los Angeles area, also San Diego a bit. So we're really excited to work with them. Hannah Reed and Bridget Winton, who recently did the hair for the winners of Dancing with the Stars. So we're honored that she even made the time to create these pieces for us in a very busy season for her. But in connecting with both of the hair artists, and hearing Jamo's story, they both felt so inspired and both were reaching out to us constantly, really wanting to make this happen and really working through the troubleshooting with us because they were so inspired by his story and his legacy. And we've been connecting with them regularly to make sure that we're really bringing to life something that we hope will really make his legacy very proud.
So another artist is doing something with flowers, is that right?
That's right. So Jamie Davenport is a floral designer based in Philadelphia, and he's taking the washroom in the back of the house, which has 3 different windows that look into it, and creating this sort of winter dreamscape. And you know, that'll have a really sort of traditional sense about it. But he also does such whimsical work that you can stand there for an hour and look at all of the details. There's another interesting installation just in front of us here in the back parlor windows by an artist who works as a display artist for Urban Outfitters, but has wrapped gifts with copper foil and then embossed them with the punch and gouge patterns that you see around the room. So there is this sort of tie between contemporary creation and something that might look nice and flashy in your own home today if you have a modern home, and the legacy of what has been really a vital craftsmanship tradition in this house.
So when you look at the artists, it seems like they do indeed run the gamut, but in terms of like contemporary art or modern art, are we going to be seeing any of those influences?
Yes, there will be a video installation actually, and I don't want to give too much away about it, but it's by a group known as the Miwi Collective based in Philadelphia and Albuquerque, and it explores ideas about how we experience other people's homes, and that could be through Zoom, seeing somebody's living room or a home office on a Zoom call, or it could be coming to a historic house and kind of peeking around in an almost voyeuristic way. I wonder what's around that corner. Am I supposed to be looking at this or not? So there are going to be some live video feeds, I'll say that much, and you'll get to sort of think deeply about the whole act of coming here and looking in the windows for the holidays.
Looking in the windows, and what was it in the Seinfeld episode, looking in the medicine cabinet?
Oh, that's right.
So when someone wants to come and check out Lit for the Holidays, what is it going to look like? Is it outside only? Do we need reservations? How does that work?
Right, it's mainly outside, but there are a couple of installations you can come inside and look at as well. We would prefer that you make reservations just so that we can keep track of the number of people and the space we have, because it's really a popular event. You can go to reedhouseandgardens.org and follow the links there to get your tickets. The party's over, the party where we light everything up for the first time, but this continues into early January. December 18th, New Year's Day, January 1st, and then again on January the 8th. And you can go and get tickets. It costs $5 if you're a member of the Delaware Historical Society, or if you decide you want to join. It's free, and you can come and tour all of the installations.
So Kayla, what part do you think that you're looking forward to the most?
You know what, we have local artists who are contributing in a very modern way, much like you were talking about, and knowing that we have artists who are sending in pieces from across the country, I think I'm really excited. I am really excited about the hair installation, honestly. I think that it's going to be the most surprising, and I don't think that someone expects to come to this beautiful, historic, classic home and see hair styled in a variety of ways, and with different hair textures and hair types. And I think that the play on that, as well as connecting it to the history here at the house, is really unique and special, and nothing I've seen before, at least. So
sure, I would imagine it's a first for a lot of people.
Yes.
And we're going to find out more about Lit for the Holidays and other things that are happening here at Reed House and Gardens when we return.
Hello, I am Justice Bennett, and I love rediscovering history on the 302.
Welcome back. We've done the old switcheroo. Brenton and Kayla out of there. Now we have Rebecca Duffy. She is the curator here at Reed House and Gardens to talk a little bit about, there's a lot going on during the holidays, and if somebody doesn't have time to come out, and unfortunately they miss, Lit for the Holidays, you have so much more going on.
We do, absolutely. So we've got those 3 walkthrough dates to come see the illumination displays. Then they are going to come down in January. Good news is we're open all year this year, Saturdays and Sundays for the new tour. We've just launched a brand new tour on October 16th, taking our guests through the inside of the house. And it actually follows a little bit of a new path, explores some new stories, and is super inquiry based. So we really hope people will come out for that.
It really is beautiful whenever you take a look at the house itself. And we talked a little bit about is it punch, groove? Is that?
Yeah, it's punch and gouge, so
punch and
pretty
gouge.
close because they are grooves. Yeah, there are details everywhere in this house, and that's really what is at the essence of the new tour, is asking all of our guests to come and wonder, how did something get that way? Maybe how it was made, but maybe why it was made or why it was put there. So we invite everybody, we start with a lot of questions. We look for what some of your interests are in some obvious and some not so obvious ways. And we start to customize the tour based on what we notice you looking at. And the punch and gouge that you can see around me in this room, especially when we get up here to the front parlor, is always a showstopper. There's always a bunch of questions about that. And we take that story to lead in all kinds of directions. Is it the apprentice that actually probably did this amazing work, right? We might think that this was a master carpenter, but you just need a template set up, right? Mm-hmm. And then have an apprentice go at it. Or is it about the fact that all of it is capped with this fabulous mahogany chair rail that was brought here from most likely Cuba or Central America and was felled and worked by enslaved labor. Depending on what the experience of our guests are, we start to take them on these different themes around the house.
And you were saying before in the break that all of these things are deliberate. It's not something that just was haphazardly put together. A lot of thought and a lot of collaboration, as it were.
Absolutely. I think it's so easy for us when we're thinking about the past to go, oh, George Reed put this here. And sometimes we do that in our own house. So sometimes we leave the mail behind the bookshelf and we lose it, right? I'm not speaking from experience. But generally we put things in deliberate places. And usually it's not just one single person, if many occupy a house, that shape what it looks like. In George Reed's case, or in the Reed House and Gardens case, it's certainly not just him. He's got a family with 8 other members to it. He's also got 9 to 8 folks that are working here all of the time, enslaved, indentured, apprenticed, and even wage earning. And our focus is really taking that period as well as the lairds in the 1920s, 30s, and beyond, and understanding how they made sense of what this house could be with the help of others, whether it was community members, whether it was people like Sylvia Rice, who was one of the most sought after cooks, a wage earner from the free black community during Reed's period, shaping what that dinner party really looked like and tasted like and maybe even sounded like, right? And thinking about all of these senses that we don't get to have if we don't stop and just sort of embrace the space and imagine what this period might have actually looked like.
So we talked about the molding. Give me another example of how someone else impacted what we see when we come through and check out the Reed House.
Oh gosh, absolutely. So when we look behind us here, we've got a table set for tea, right? And that table tilts up and would generally be stored in the corner. The silly thing about this table is it's actually much later than 1800. So although it's set for the Reed family has just left, and perhaps Mrs. Reed has just had tea here, well, she would have died about 10 years before a table or a lamp like this even existed. So first of all, these were put here by curators based off of an inventory taken on Reed's death. Which already starts to complicate the way we look at these things. But this table also tilts up and it goes away, right? And these little sandwiches and these little foods don't sit here all day, right? So when we think about having a space like the front parlor or the back parlor, a blue room right next to us that folks will see on the tour, being empty a lot of the time and multifunctional, we think from our modern sensibilities, wow, that's so thrifty of them to use these spaces all these different ways. But in their time, they're not doing that work, right? So who's actually coming in here and deciding what this room looks like at any given time and setting it for a meal in the 1800s? Who's doing that again in the 1900s? We have all of these photos from the layered period of this room constantly changing. Architecture all in place, but furnishings constantly changing, just like our own homes. And we have it even from the 2000s with the curators as well.
That's amazing. Now tell us about some of those rooms upstairs.
Oh yes, of course. It's been a little bit since we've been able to take our guests upstairs given the ongoing health crisis, but we can now. So there are about 4 or 5 rooms upstairs, depending on your timing and your questions. We've got a bathing room, which is exceptional to have an original bathing room from the early 19th century, architecturally intact. A couple of bed chambers, and actually our most fabulous room architecturally is upstairs. So I'll leave that one as a little secret for when everyone gets here. But imagine this room times about 6 or 7 in terms of its architecture.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So if someone wants to come and visit, how long should it sounds like you should allot some time to check all this stuff out.
Yeah, well, we're pretty good at getting you in and out in just about an hour. 45 minutes to an hour is the tour. We are limited to just 10 people per tour. So we do have an advanced reservation system at readhouseandgardens.org, which we recommend. But if there's space, we're always happy to take walk-ins too. So you can buy your tickets right here that day. It is about an hour, but we have found in the first couple weeks of doing this tour that folks are begging us to stay a little bit longer, peek back in some of these first rooms. This is one of the first rooms they see and they wait, oh wait, I need to see this room again. Because now that I learned something upstairs, I'm applying it down here and I have some questions about this, this plaster work or the ceiling or these figures or these prints. And so we do typically let people sneak in for a little bit longer before we send them out on their way. But yeah, just maybe an hour or 2.
Excellent. Well, Rebecca, your enthusiasm for Reed House and Gardens is always so inspiring. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much,
us.
Jackie.
We'll be right back. For more information, you can visit readhouseandgardens.org. That'll do it for this week's episode of the 302. We're going to leave you with a walk through the gardens here at Reed House and Gardens. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. Tell them you saw it on the 302.